Welcome to the HFY Codex Tale. If you like our videos, keep supporting and subscribe to our channel. Delivery Day, the will that changed his life. The twin suns of Yulara Prime were setting, casting golden light across the sky as the human shuttle landed. Dust swirled around the landing zone. A tall man stepped out, quiet, tired, and alone. His name was Daniel Reid. He didn't come for trade. He didn't come for exploration. He came to keep a promise. Commander Valen had been more than an alien friend. He had saved Daniel's life during the orbital siege of Kaylee's 5. They had served together, eaten together, and even shared stories about home. Valen had called him brother before falling to a rare Yularan blood sickness months ago. Daniel was here now to attend the final ceremony and to deliver something personal, a memory Crystal Valen had recorded before his death. The palace guards led him through long halls made of silver and bone glass. Ancient carvings marked every corner, reminders of Yulara's old traditions, things Daniel didn't fully understand. Finally, they reached the high chamber. Dozens of alien nobles stood in silence. A great flame burned in the center, casting flickers of orange across the marble floor. At the head stood High Keeper Saron, holding a small glowing cube. "Human," Saron spoke, his voice deep. "You were named in the will of Valen of House Tareth. Please stand before the circle of witnesses." Daniel nodded and stepped forward. The cube activated. Valen's voice filled the chamber, calm, proud, and full of warmth. "If you are hearing this, my journey has ended. I thank you all for honoring my final day. And to you, Daniel Reid, my brother, my only Earthblood friend, I ask you to do something only you can do." The room shifted, a low murmur spread. "I leave you guardianship of my daughters, Enya and Lyra." Daniel's eyes widened. "Daughters? They are nearly of bonding age, and my bloodline demands they not be left to the state. I trust you more than anyone in the Empire. Please protect them. And by our laws, the one who becomes their guardian must also be prepared to accept full bond rights, should the daughters choose it." Gasps filled the chamber. Daniel stepped back, stunned. "Wait, what does that mean?" The High Keeper stepped forward. "On Yulara, daughters without family must be bonded or they lose status. If the guardian is male and compatible, the law assumes he is to be considered a future mate." Daniel shook his head. "I didn't come here for this. I came to say goodbye." "The law was not written for your comfort," Saron said. "It was written to protect the legacy of blood." Two doors opened behind the flame. And then they walked in. Enya tall, silent, graceful, eyes like frozen fire. Lyra slightly younger with a curious expression. She looked straight at Daniel and tilted her head, as if she already knew him. Neither of them smiled, but neither turned away. "This is a mistake," Daniel whispered. "I'm not part of this world." But when Lyra stepped forward, her voice was soft. "You were our father's last choice, his final voice. And now, whether you choose us or not, the bond has already begun." That night, Daniel sat alone in his guest quarters. He stared out the window at the twin moons. He didn't know these girls, he didn't want to dishonor his friend, but this was too much. He poured a glass of mineral wine, still hearing Valen's words echo in his mind. "Only you, Daniel, only you." He whispered to the stars. "Why me?" Down the hall behind locked doors, Enya stood with arms crossed. "A human, this is madness." Lyra sat on the edge of her bed, holding a glowing flower. "He didn't flinch," she whispered. "Maybe that means something." Neither of them knew what would come next. But one thing was certain. The will had been read, the bond had begun. And nothing on Yulara would ever be the same again. The daughters he never expected. Daniel didn't sleep. Not even for a second. He sat in the dark, staring at the curved ceiling of his guest chamber, wondering how his life had changed so fast. One moment, he was honoring an old friend. The next, he was guardian to two alien daughters who might one day call him mate. In the morning, the court assistant knocked gently. "The Queen requests your presence." Daniel blinked. "Queen?" "Yes, Queen Enya." He froze. "Enya's a queen." Only by blood. She has not claimed the throne yet. She's still unbonded. They led him through the palace to the private garden, a sacred place outsiders were never allowed. There in the middle of pale blue trees and floating lights stood Enya. Tall still, wearing silver robes that shimmered like ice. She didn't bow, she didn't smile. "So," she said, her voice sharp, "you're the human my father trusted with his blood." Daniel nodded. "I didn't ask for this. Nor did I yet here we are." Before he could respond, another voice spoke up. "Enya, you promised you'd try to be kind." Lyra stepped out from behind a tree, her tone softer, her eyes warmer. She wore a light green robe and held a tiny translator crystal in her palm. "Hi," she said to Daniel, smiling gently. "You're not what I expected." "Neither are you," he replied. Enya turned away and folded her arms. "He should leave, this won't work." "It's not up to you alone," Lyra said. "He was chosen, we should try." Daniel raised a hand. "Listen, I don't want to force anything, but I made a promise to your father. I'll stay and protect you both. That's all I can offer." Enya stepped closer, her eyes locked on his. "Do you know what happens to unbonded daughters on Yulara?" "I was told." "Do you know what happens to a male who refuses the bond after accepting guardianship?" "They said punishment." "No," she said coldly. "They say it's death." Daniel's heart skipped. "You're serious? Deadly serious? I didn't sign up for this. And yet you're here." Lyra stepped between them, placing her hand on Enya's arm. "Stop it, he's not our enemy." Enya pulled away and walked back toward the temple. "Then he should stay far away, from both of us." Lyra turned to Daniel. Her voice was quieter now. "She's not really angry at you, she's just scared. She loved our father, and she's lost too much already." "What about you?" Daniel asked. "What do you feel about all this?" She looked up at him, and her answer came softly. "I feel curious." Later that day, Daniel sat in the study, reading about Yularan customs. He learned their people bonded not just through ceremony, but through aura resonance. If two beings, life energies synced during moments of trust, a spiritual bond began to form. A light glow would appear under the skin, usually at the wrist or heart. He rubbed his wrist, half expecting to see something. But it was still bare. Still human. Night fell. In her room, Enya stood by the window, staring at the moons. "He looks weak," she whispered. "But he didn't run," Lyra replied. "That doesn't make him strong." "It makes him stay," Lyra said. "And sometimes, staying is harder than war." Somewhere else in the palace, Daniel whispered to himself. "I said I'd protect them, but no one warned me they'd be this powerful, even without touching me." Because they weren't children. They were women, with their own fears, memories, and fire. And he wasn't just their guardian. He was walking on a blade, balanced between honor and a bond he never wanted. But maybe something deeper was already beginning. The law of the bonded. Daniel stood in front of the council hall gates, his hands clenched, jaw tight. He had spent the entire night reading ancient Yularan law scrolls, searching for a loophole, any way to break the bond rule without hurting Enya and Lyra. There was none. Every line said the same thing. If a chosen guardian refuses the bond, the daughters become state property. The guardian is declared a betrayer of the house and must face judgment under fire. He stepped into the hall. The scent of ancient smoke and ceremonial oils filled the air. High Keeper Saron was already waiting. "You seek a path out, human." "Yes, I never agreed to be part of any mating ritual. I came here to honor a friend, not become a husband." Saron's face remained calm. "Your words are heard, but the law is not made of words, it is made of oaths." Daniel walked forward slowly. "You would punish me for not falling in love." "No," Saron said, "for not protecting those who were placed under your care. Love is not required, devotion is." Daniel sighed and stared up at the murals carved into the stone wall. There were stories drawn in gold and bone, warriors, mothers, unions sealed with blood and breath. There must be a choice. Saron looked at him. There is, but it is not yours alone to make. That evening, a formal gathering was called. Enya and Lyra stood beside Daniel in the grand hall. Enya wore armor, light but ceremonial. Lyra wore a soft violet robe, her eyes brighter than before. The elders of the house lined the seats. The firelight danced across their cold faces. The bondkeeper stepped forward. This is the first human to be chosen under Yularan law, she began. Therefore, we shall recite the old choice. The room fell silent. She raised a scroll and read aloud. If the one chosen denies the bond, he shall still care for the daughters for one full moon, to prove his loyalty. After that time, the daughters shall choose him or cast him out. Daniel blinked. So they get to choose. The bondkeeper nodded. After the trial period, yes. And if they both refuse, you are free to leave but must carry the house mark, forever bound to its shame. Daniel looked at Enya. She wouldn't meet his gaze. He looked at Lyra. She nodded slightly. Then I accept the trial, he said. Later that night, in the private garden, Daniel sat under the glowing trees. Lyra joined him, sitting beside him in the grass. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For giving us time. No one else ever asked for that before. He looked up at the stars. I didn't come here for this, he said. But maybe I was meant to. Lyra placed her hand on the ground beside his. Their fingers didn't touch, but the space between them felt like a spark waiting to happen. Inside her room, Enya watched from her window. She whispered to herself, if he thinks a month will change anything, he still doesn't know who I am. But her fingers lingered at her wrist, because for a moment earlier that day, she thought she felt it. A warmth, a pulse, a sign, not love, not yet, but something dangerous, something alive. Enya's warning. The palace was quiet that morning. Too quiet. Daniel walked the outer corridors alone, trying to clear his mind. The weight of tradition, law, and unspoken emotion pressed heavier every day. He thought about Lyra, her kindness, her gentle curiosity. She was trying, she wanted this bond to work. But Enya. She stayed distant, sharp, cold. Yet something about her silence felt like a wall hiding something deeper. He found her in the Hall of Swords. Polished blades lined the walls. Enya stood before one, holding a practice staff, breathing slow and steady. Training? Daniel asked, stepping in quietly. Memories, she replied without looking. This was my father's hall. He nodded, letting the silence stretch. Why do you hate me, Enya? She turned sharply. I don't hate you. You haven't spoken to me for 2 days. That's not hate, that's caution. She walked past him, then stopped. Let me be clear, Daniel. I will never call you mate. I'm not asking you to, he replied. She stared at him, her voice lower now. Then stay away, because if you ever think this bond is real, if you ever think I could feel something for you. She stepped closer. You'll only end up broken. Daniel didn't step back. Why are you afraid of feeling something? She blinked just once. Because I already did, once. She looked away. He was a pilot from my father's guard. I loved him. I told him I didn't care about tradition or bloodlines. He was supposed to choose me in the ceremony. He did. He did. And the court exiled him for it. Daniel's chest tightened. What happened to him? They sent him to the Red Rim. Her voice cracked just slightly. He didn't come back. Silence filled the room again. Daniel finally spoke. I'm not him. No, she said. You're worse, you're what the law demands, not what my heart chose. Then maybe I should leave. And if you do, she whispered, you'll prove that no one ever stays. He paused, looked her in the eyes. What if I stayed without asking anything in return, just stayed? Her eyes searched his face, then she turned away again. Don't offer things you can't keep. That night, Enya stood alone under the moonlight. She touched her wrist, where the ancient bond mark might appear if the soul accepted the bond. Still bare, still untouched, but her chest felt heavy, and her pulse, it raced. Across the palace, Lyra watched Daniel from the garden steps. She could feel it too. Something was changing. And it wasn't just about duty anymore. It was something more dangerous than law. It was choice. Lyra's confession. The evening air was warm and the garden lights shimmered like soft stars. Daniel sat alone on the stone bench, watching tiny glowing insects dance around the flowers. It was peaceful for once. But he wasn't at peace. His thoughts were torn between the two daughters of Valan. Inya's pain still echoed in his chest. And Lyra, gentle, patient Lyra, she was slipping closer every day. He didn't hear her footsteps. She appeared beside him like the wind, barefoot, quiet. She sat down without a word, pulling her knees up to her chest. For a few moments, they just sat there in silence. Then she whispered, "You look tired today." "I feel like I've aged 10 years in 5 days," Daniel chuckled. "You look good in Yularan robes," she added shyly. "Better than I imagined." He looked at her, surprised. "You imagine me." She nodded, not meeting his eyes. "Before you came, Father used to talk about you. He said you weren't just brave, you were kind. He said you would protect us, even when you didn't have to." Daniel's throat tightened. "I didn't expect any of this, Lyra. I don't know if I can give you what your people want." "I don't want what my people want," she whispered. He turned to face her. "Then what do you want?" She placed her hand on the stone between them. Slowly, he placed his hand beside hers. Not touching, just close. The space between them felt heavy with something real. "I want you to stay," she said softly. "Not because the law says so, but because I feel something." She finally looked at him. Her eyes were full of something raw, honest. "I know I'm younger than Inya. I know I'm not as strong or as proud. But when I'm near you, my heart beats different. My body glows faintly. I think my soul is already choosing you." Daniel blinked. In the soft moonlight, a glow appeared on her wrist, just under the skin. Faint gold. The sign of bond initiation. "Lyra, I'm not asking you to love me today," she said quickly. "I just wanted you to know I already feel close to you. Even if you never choose me, I'll be glad I said it." He didn't know what to say. So he gently touched her wrist, feeling the warmth of her skin. The glow brightened just for a second, then faded. She smiled. "See, not so scary." From the balcony above, Inya watched them. Her fingers gripped the railing. But it wasn't anger in her eyes. It was confusion. Something she thought she had buried was starting to rise again. And it scared her more than any war she had ever trained for. But in the darkness deeper than shadow, a figure moved. A Yularan noble, Torvik from House Realm, had been watching too. He spoke into a silent crystal. "The younger daughter is bonding fast. If the human completes it, the sisters will hold double royal blood. And if that happens, the council will name him king." "Do not let the bond complete," came the reply. "Understood." Lyra leaned her head on Daniel's shoulder. And for the first time since he arrived on this strange world, he didn't feel alone. But above them, stars blinked cold. Because the true trial had not yet begun. And someone was planning to tear the bond apart before it could fully bloom. The ceremony of choice. The bells of the high temple rang before dawn. Daniel woke to the sound, his heart pounding. Lyra's soft confession still echoed in his mind, her glowing wrist, her warmth beside him. But this morning, the air felt wrong. A court messenger appeared at his door. "By order of the council, the ceremony of choice begins now." "What? It's too early. I thought we had a full moon cycle." "The council says the bond has accelerated. Delays are dangerous now." Daniel dressed quickly, uneasy. Something was off. He had only been on Yulara for 8 days. Too soon. Too sudden. In the central arena of the flame circle, hundreds of nobles had gathered. Lyra stood at one side in ceremonial violet. Enya stood at the other, dressed in obsidian black. Daniel was led to the center. Between them, the bondkeeper spoke aloud. By Yularan law, the guardian has reached his moment of decision. If he chooses one, the bond is sealed. If he chooses both, they must accept him. If he chooses neither, a pause, he shall bear the mark of shame, and the daughters will be offered to other houses. Gasps echoed, whispers spread like fire. Daniel looked at Lyra. Her eyes were kind, hopeful, trusting. He turned to Enya. Her face was unreadable, proud, cold. But her hands, they trembled. I didn't ask for this, Daniel said, his voice calm. But I've come to care deeply for both of them. I won't make a choice based on fear or law. So I will only accept a bond if they both choose me freely. A long silence. All eyes turned to Enya first. She stepped forward slowly, then stopped. The law may want a king, but I want something more. She took a slow breath. I want someone who doesn't need to rule me, to stay. Her eyes met his. So yes, I choose him. Gasps erupted. Then the bondkeeper turned to Lyra. She was already crying, smiling through tears. I chose him days ago, she whispered. Even if he never chose me back. Golden light began to rise between the three of them, soft, glowing strands forming above their skin. The bond was beginning. The ritual was complete. But suddenly, a scream, a blast of energy hit the circle. Guards fell. People screamed. Torvek, the noble from House Reln, stepped into the flame path with an illegal energy bow. No human will sit on the throne of Yulara, he shouted. You think this bond makes him one of us? He aimed at Daniel. But Enya moved first. Faster than light. She dove, grabbed Daniel's arm, pulled him to the ground. The arrow struck her shoulder. Lyra screamed. Guards swarmed Torvek, tackling him. But Enya fell hard, bleeding. Daniel crawled to her side. Why did you do that? She coughed, blood at her lips, but smiled through it. Because you stayed. And because I was tired of pushing away something real. Lyra dropped beside them. She needs a healer now. But then something impossible happened. Golden light erupted from their wrists to their hearts. All three. Bond complete. Not by force. Not by law. But by choice. Enya's wound began to seal, glowing faintly. The ancient energy responded to the bond, healing what hate had tried to destroy. High Keeper Seron watched in silence. 3 hearts, 1 choice. This hasn't happened in generations. He is not just their mate, he whispered. He is their future. The human who rewrote the law. The city of Yulara stood still. No wind. No whispers. Only golden light floating above the flame circle, where 3 stood bound. A human and 2 daughters of royal blood, hand in hand, surrounded by a silence even time respected. Enya's wound had healed completely. Not by medicine, but by something far older. The completed bond. Daniel stood between them, one hand in Lyra's, the other in Enya. He wasn't just holding hands. He was holding a future that should not have existed. A human wasn't meant to survive the bond. And yet here he was. The High Council was forced to act. Days later, Daniel was summoned to the Council Dome, where nobles, warriors, and scholars gathered under the sky mirror. They called it an emergency vote. But everyone already knew. The human must be judged, one noble shouted. This bond violates every rule of our lineage. He bonded with 2 daughters of the same house, another cried. What is this, a love triangle or a power grab? He was chosen by blood, Seron said calmly. And more importantly, he was chosen by them. Daniel stepped forward. He didn't bow. He didn't shout. He just spoke. I didn't come here to take power. I came to honor a friend. I tried to walk away. You wouldn't let me. But in that time, I saw who Enya is. I saw Lyra's heart. and I saw a broken law that forces love into a cage. So no, I don't want your throne, but I won't let your system break the ones I've come to care about. Enya stood beside him. He faced death without armor. He earned our trust without command. He didn't rewrite our law, he revealed its weakness. Lyra added softly, he didn't choose power, he chose us. The chamber fell into silence. Then High Keeper Saron stood slowly. Then so be it. He raised a scroll and spoke words that hadn't been heard in centuries. By the will of the people and proof of the bond, Daniel Reid of Earth shall be recorded in our archives as the first human consort of dual flame. The law shall be amended. That bonds to be sacred must be built not on order, but on choice. The decision shook the galaxy. Humans were no longer seen as weak outsiders. They were called bondworthy. And Daniel, he didn't become a king. He became something rarer. A legend. He lived on Yulara in peace, walking beside Enya, fierce and loyal, and Lyra, soft and strong, not as their ruler, but as their equal. Children on Yulara now grow up learning about him. Not for his power, but for his patience. Not for conquest, but for compassion. And sometimes under the twin moons, when a new child is born and a wrist glows gold for the first time, they whisper, another bond has begun. Just like the human who rewrote the law. The end.